Have you ever stood at the edge of your greatest breakthrough, only to watch yourself destroy it with your own hands? Right now, as you hear these words, notice what happens in your body. Does your chest tighten slightly? Does something inside you want to look away? You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That moment when everything is finally falling into place, the job opportunity that could change everything, the relationship that feels genuinely healthy, the creative project that makes your soul sing, and then something inside you hits the self-destruct button. You procrastinate on the application that could transform your career. You pick fights with the person who actually treats you well. You abandon the project that lights you up inside, telling yourself you'll get back to it tomorrow, next week, next month. But you never do. And afterward, you sit in the ruins of your own making, asking that familiar question, why do I keep doing this to myself? Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because this will change how you see yourself forever. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not your own worst enemy. What you're experiencing isn't a character flaw or a lack of willpower. It's one of the most sophisticated psychological protection mechanisms that exists within the human psyche. Carl Jung understood something that most people never recognize about themselves. He discovered that every human being carries within them what he called the shadow, the part of your personality that houses everything you've learned to reject, suppress, or hide about yourself. And here's what Jung revealed that changes everything. Your shadow isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to protect you. Your psyche is trying to tell you something profound through these acts of self-sabotage. The unconscious mind always knows something that your conscious mind hasn't yet understood. And that something is this: you've learned, somewhere deep in your past, that success is dangerous. Think about this for a moment. When you were a child, what happened when you succeeded? What happened when you stood out? What happened when you got attention, praise, or recognition? For many of us, success meant becoming a target. It meant jealousy from siblings. It meant higher expectations from parents. It meant standing out in ways that felt unsafe. Your nervous system remembers, your body remembers, and your shadow, that protective part of your psyche, remembers too. It learned that flying under the radar meant survival. It learned that mediocrity meant safety. It learned that if you never really try, you never really fail, and if you never really succeed, you never have to face the terrifying question of whether you're worthy of that success. This isn't random. When you find yourself sabotaging your diet right before a big event, your shadow is whispering, what if people expect you to look perfect all the time now? When you procrastinate on that creative project that could launch your career, your shadow is protecting you from the fear, what if I'm actually not as talented as I think I am? When you create conflict in your healthiest relationship, your shadow is trying to solve an old equation. Everyone I've ever loved has left me eventually. If I push them away first, at least I'll be in control of the pain. Notice how your body responds as I say this. Does something inside you feel seen? Does part of you want to argue with these words, insist that it's different for you, that you're just lazy or unmotivated or fundamentally flawed? That resistance you're feeling right now, that's your shadow protecting you from a truth that might require you to change. The shadow operates from a simple principle: the familiar pain is always safer than the unfamiliar joy. Your psyche has been trained to recognize the emotional signature of struggle, disappointment, and not quite making it. These feelings, while painful, are predictable, they're manageable. You know how to survive them because you've been surviving them your whole life. But success is uncharted territory. Success means being visible. Success means being responsible for maintaining something good. Success means risking the loss of something valuable, and your shadow would rather keep you safely struggling than risk the unknown territory of actually getting what you want. Carl Jung revealed that the shadow isn't evil, it's protective. It's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to save you from what it perceives as danger. The problem is that the shadow's definition of danger was formed when you were very young, when you had fewer resources, less understanding, and more vulnerability. Your adult self can handle success, visibility, and joy. But your shadow is still operating from the emotional intelligence of a frightened child who learned that it was safer to be small, invisible, and struggling than to be big, seen, and thriving. This is why willpower doesn't work. This is why positive thinking isn't enough. This is why you can have all the motivation in the world and still find yourself sabotaging your own progress. You're not fighting against laziness or lack of discipline. You're fighting against a primal survival mechanism that believes it's protecting your life. The shadow shows up differently for each person. For some, it's the procrastination that prevents you from finishing anything important. For others, it's the perfectionism that prevents you from starting anything at all. Some people sabotage through chaos, creating drama and crisis to avoid dealing with success. Others sabotage through numbness, shutting down emotionally whenever life starts to feel too good. Maybe your shadow speaks through your inner critic, that tells you you're not ready, not qualified, not worthy of what you want. Maybe it speaks through your body, creating mysterious illnesses or exhaustion whenever you're about to break through. Maybe it speaks through your relationships, causing you to withdraw from people who could support your growth or attract people who reinforce your limitations. But here's what Jung understood, that changes everything. The shadow only has power over you when it remains unconscious. The moment you begin to recognize its, understand its motives, and see its patterns, you begin to transform your relationship with it. Your shadow has been running your life from the background, making decisions based on outdated information and childhood fears. But when you bring it into the light of your conscious awareness, something miraculous happens. You can begin to dialogue with it. You can thank it for trying to protect you, and you can gently, lovingly begin to show it that you're no longer the vulnerable child who needed that protection. The part of you that sabotages is the same part of you that survived. It's the part that learned to navigate a world that felt dangerous, unpredictable, and threatening. It developed strategies to keep you safe, and those strategies worked. They got you here. They kept you alive. But the strategies that were necessary for survival are often the very strategies that prevent you from thriving. The hypervigilance that protected you as a child becomes the anxiety that paralyzes you as an adult. The people-pleasing that kept you safe in your family becomes the self-abandonment that destroys your relationships. The perfectionism that earned you love and approval becomes the prison that prevents you from taking any risks at all. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are, by integrating all the parts of yourself that you've disowned or rejected. And the first step in this process is recognizing that your shadow isn't your enemy. It's a scared, protective part of you that's been working overtime to keep you safe. When you understand this, everything changes. Instead of fighting against your self-sabotage, you can begin to work with it. Instead of hating the part of you that holds you back, you can begin to understand why it's holding you back. And instead of trying to force yourself into success through willpower and determination, you can begin to create safety for success. Your shadow needs to know that it's safe to let you succeed. It needs to understand that you're no longer the powerless child who couldn't handle visibility, responsibility, or joy. It needs to see evidence that you can take care of yourself, protect yourself, and navigate the challenges that come with getting what you want. This is deep work. This is soul work. This isn't about quick fixes or life hacks or 7 easy steps to stop self-sabotaging. This is about developing a relationship with the most protective, primal part of your psyche and helping it understand that it's safe to let you have what you want. The unconscious mind always knows. It knows when you're trying to bypass its wisdom. It knows when you're trying to force change without addressing the underlying fears. It knows when you're trying to think your way out of patterns that were created in your feeling body. But when you approach your shadow with curiosity instead of judgment, with compassion instead of criticism, with understanding instead of impatience, something begins to shift. The part of you that has been your greatest obstacle can begin to become your greatest ally. Because here's what Jung revealed that most people never understand. The shadow contains not only your rejected weaknesses, but also your rejected strengths. The very qualities that you're afraid to express, the very power that you're afraid to own, the very brilliance that you're afraid to embody, all of this lives in your shadow, waiting to be reclaimed. The self-sabotage isn't just about fear, it's also about power. Your shadow knows how powerful you really are, and that power feels dangerous. What if you actually succeed beyond your wildest dreams? What if you actually become the person you're capable of being? What if you actually create the life you've been dreaming of? Your shadow is protecting you not just from failure, but from the responsibility and visibility that comes with success. It's protecting you not just from rejection, but from the power that comes with acceptance. It's protecting you not just from disappointment, but from the magnificent terror of actually getting everything you want. This understanding changes everything about how you approach your patterns of self-sabotage. Instead of trying to overcome them, you begin to understand them. Instead of trying to eliminate them, you begin to transform them. Instead of seeing them as evidence of your weakness, you begin to see them as evidence of your power. Your psyche is so intelligent that it will sabotage your success to protect you from something that feels even more dangerous than failure. This isn't dysfunction, this is sophisticated psychological protection, and the moment you understand this protection, you can begin to work with it instead of against it. The shadow's whisper isn't trying to destroy your life, it's trying to save it, but it's operating from old information, old fears and old definitions of safety. Your job isn't to silence this whisper, but to update it. Your job isn't to overcome your shadow, but to integrate it. Your job isn't to eliminate the part of you that protects, but to help it understand what you actually need protection from now. As we move forward, you're going to begin to see how this protective mechanism doesn't just create internal sabotage, it also creates the external obstacles and challenges that seem to appear whenever you're about to break through. Because Jung understood something even more profound about the human psyche, we don't just sabotage ourselves internally, we unconsciously create external circumstances that mirror our internal conflicts. And understanding this process of projection is the key to transforming not just your relationship with yourself, but your relationship with your entire reality. Your shadow doesn't just work internally, sabotaging you from within. It does something far more sophisticated and mysterious. It reaches out into your reality and begins to create the very obstacles, conflicts, and limitations that keep you exactly where your unconscious mind believes you need to stay. Right now, think about the last major setback you experienced. Was it really just bad luck? Was it truly someone else's fault? Or is it possible that somehow, on a level you're not even aware of, you participated in creating that very situation? Carl Jung revealed one of the most startling truths about human psychology. We don't just experience reality, we unconsciously create it. Everything you see out there in your external world is actually a reflection of what exists in here in your internal world. The people who frustrate you, the situations that block you, the circumstances that seem to conspire against your success, all of these are mirrors showing you exactly what's happening in your unconscious mind. Jung called this projection, and understanding how it works will revolutionize how you see every challenge, every conflict, and every obstacle in your life. When your shadow believes that success is dangerous, it doesn't just make you procrastinate or self-sabotage internally. It begins to attract and create external situations that validate this belief. You find yourself working for bosses who don't recognize your potential. You attract partners who can't handle your success. You end up in situations where pursuing your dreams feels impossible or impractical. But here's what will shock you. These aren't things happening to you. These are things you're unconsciously participating in creating. Your unconscious mind is constantly scanning your environment, looking for people and situations that match your internal beliefs about yourself and what you deserve. It's like a radar system that's been programmed to find evidence that supports your deepest fears about success, love, and your own worthiness. When you believe deep down that you don't deserve to be truly happy, you unconsciously make choices that ensure your unhappiness. You choose the job that drains your soul instead of the one that excites you. You stay in relationships that diminish you instead of seeking ones that celebrate you. You surround yourself with people who reinforce your limitations instead of challenging you to grow. And the most incredible part, you do all of this while believing that these things are just happening to you, that you're a victim of circumstances beyond your control. Think about your current life situation right now. What patterns keep repeating? What types of people keep showing up in your life? What kinds of obstacles keep appearing just when you're about to break through? These repetitive patterns aren't coincidences. They're your psyche's way of creating a reality that matches your internal beliefs. If you believe you're not worthy of love, you'll unconsciously attract people who are unable to love you fully. If you believe you're destined to struggle financially, you'll unconsciously make decisions that keep you struggling. If you believe that pursuing your dreams is selfish or impractical, you'll unconsciously create situations that make it impossible to pursue them. Jung understood that the external world becomes a stage where your internal dramas play out over and over again. The same themes, the same conflicts, the same disappointments, just with different actors and different settings. Your mother was critical, and nothing you did was ever good enough. You'll find yourself working for bosses who are critical and never satisfied with your work. Your father was emotionally unavailable and couldn't see your value. You'll attract romantic partners who are emotionally unavailable and can't see your value. You grew up in a family where money was always scarce and talking about dreams was discouraged. You'll create a life where money is always scarce and pursuing your dreams feels impossible. This isn't because you're cursed or unlucky. This is because your unconscious mind is trying to solve old problems by recreating familiar situations. It's hoping that this time, with this person in this situation, you'll finally get it right. You'll finally earn the love, recognition, or success that you couldn't get from your original family. But here's the truth that Jung revealed. You can't heal old wounds by recreating them in new situations. You can't get the love you didn't receive as a child by finding someone who withholds love in the same way your parents did. You can't prove your worth to people who can't see it any more than you could prove your worth to family members who couldn't see it. The projection mechanism keeps you trapped in cycles of attempting to resolve the past through the present. And as long as you're unconscious of this process, you'll keep attracting the same lessons, the same challenges, and the same disappointments. Notice what happens in your body. as I say this. Does part of you want to argue that your situation really is different, that the people in your life really are the problem, that you really are just unlucky in love or work or life? That resistance you're feeling is your ego protecting you from a truth that would require you to take responsibility for your reality in a completely different way. But what if I told you that understanding projection isn't about blame or responsibility in the way you might think? What if I told you that recognizing how you create your reality is actually the most empowering realization you can have? Because once you understand that you're not a victim of your circumstances, but an unconscious participant in creating them, everything changes. You realize that if you have the power to create obstacles, you also have the power to create opportunities. If you have the power to attract dysfunction, you also have the power to attract health. If you have the power to manifest struggle, you also have the power to manifest success. Your unconscious mind is incredibly powerful. It's constantly working to bring you experiences that match your internal beliefs and expectations. The problem is that most people are unconscious of what they actually believe about themselves and what they actually expect from life. You might consciously say you want success, but unconsciously believe you don't deserve it. You might consciously say you want love, but unconsciously believe you're unlovable. You might consciously say you want abundance, but unconsciously believe that good things don't happen to people like you. And your unconscious beliefs always win. They're more powerful than your conscious desires because they're connected to your emotional body, your nervous system, and your survival mechanisms. They operate below the level of rational thought, in the territory where your deepest sense of identity and safety reside. Jung revealed that projection works through what he called the compensatory function of the psyche. Whatever you reject or suppress about yourself will be projected onto the external world and experienced as coming from outside of you. If you can't acknowledge your own anger, you'll attract angry people who express the rage you won't let yourself feel. If you can't own your own power, you'll attract powerful people who seem to have all the control while you feel powerless. If you can't accept your own needs for attention and recognition, you'll attract narcissistic people who demand all the attention while your needs go unmet. The very qualities you judge in others are often the qualities you've disowned in yourself. The behaviors that trigger you most intensely are usually behaviors that represent parts of your own shadow that you refuse to acknowledge. This is why Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. The people who push your buttons are actually showing you where your buttons are. They're revealing the parts of yourself that you haven't yet integrated or accepted. But projection doesn't just work with negative qualities. You also project your positive qualities, your unrealized potential, and your disowned strengths onto others. You put people on pedestals, seeing them as having qualities that you believe you lack. You admire others for being confident, creative, successful, or authentic, while believing that these qualities are somehow unavailable to you. When you find yourself consistently drawn to certain types of people, consistently inspired by particular qualities, or consistently envious of specific achievements, you're actually recognizing parts of yourself that you haven't yet claimed or developed. The person you admire for their confidence is showing you your own potential for confidence. The person you envy for their success is reflecting your own capacity for success. The person you're drawn to for their authenticity is mirroring your own authentic self that's waiting to be expressed. Jung understood that we can only recognize in others what already exists within us. You can't see a quality in someone else unless that quality is already present in your own psyche, even if it's buried in your unconscious or undeveloped in your conscious experience. This means that every person in your life is actually a mirror, reflecting back to you some aspect of yourself that you either need to integrate or need to heal. The difficult people are showing you your wounds and your disowned shadow qualities. The inspiring people are showing you your potential and your disowned light qualities. Your entire external reality becomes a feedback system, constantly showing you what's happening in your internal reality. Your relationships become mirrors of your relationship with yourself. Your work situation becomes a mirror of your relationship with your own power and creativity. Your financial situation becomes a mirror of your relationship with your own worth and deservingness. But here's where this understanding becomes truly transformative. Once you realize that your external world is reflecting your internal world, you can begin to change your external circumstances by changing your internal landscape. Instead of trying to change other people, you can change your relationship with the parts of yourself that those people represent. Instead of trying to escape difficult situations, you can heal the internal wounds that are creating those situations. Instead of waiting for the world to recognize your value, you can begin to recognize your own value in a way that naturally attracts recognition from others. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen through positive thinking or affirmations alone. It happens through the deep psychological work of becoming conscious of your unconscious beliefs, healing your unresolved wounds, and integrating the disowned parts of your psyche. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming a whole, integrated individual who is no longer unconsciously creating their reality through projection. It's the process of taking back the power you've given to external circumstances and people, and recognizing that the source of both your limitations and your potential lies within you. When you understand projection, you begin to see that every challenge in your life is actually an opportunity for growth and self-understanding. Every difficult person is a teacher showing you something about yourself that needs attention. Every obstacle is a mirror reflecting back to you the internal barriers that are creating external barriers. Your psyche is incredibly intelligent. It will continue to create external situations that force you to confront the internal issues that you're avoiding. It will keep bringing you the same lessons in different forms until you finally learn what you need to learn about yourself. The relationship that triggers all your abandonment issues will keep showing up until you heal your abandonment wounds. The work situation that activates all your fears about not being good enough will keep repeating until you address your core beliefs about your own adequacy. The financial struggles will keep recurring until you transform your relationship with your own worth and deservingness. But here's what's beautiful about understanding this process. Once you begin to see the patterns, once you recognize the mirrors, once you understand how projection works, you can begin to consciously participate in creating a reality that reflects your healed, integrated, authentic self, rather than your wounded, fragmented, unconscious self. The same mechanism that creates obstacles can create opportunities. The same psychological force that attracts dysfunction can attract health. The same unconscious power that manifests struggle can manifest success. Your unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you expect. It doesn't separate your conscious desires from your unconscious beliefs. It simply works to create experiences that match your deepest sense of who you are and what you deserve. This is why changing your external circumstances without changing your internal landscape rarely works. You might get the new job, the new relationship, or the new opportunity, but if your internal beliefs about yourself haven't changed, you'll unconsciously recreate the same patterns in the new situation. The person who believes they're not worthy of love will find ways to sabotage love, even with the most loving partner. The person who believes they're destined to struggle will find ways to create struggle, even in the most abundant circumstances. The person who believes they don't deserve success will find ways to undermine success, even when opportunities are plentiful. But when you begin to transform your internal landscape, when you heal the wounds that create limiting beliefs, when you integrate the shadow qualities that create internal conflict, when you reclaim the projected strengths that you've given away to others, your external reality begins to transform as well. You stop attracting people who can't see your value because you've learned to see your own value. You stop creating situations that limit your potential because you've stopped limiting yourself internally. You stop manifesting struggle because you've healed the parts of you that believed struggle was necessary for survival or worthiness. This is the profound truth that Jung revealed about human psychology. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are an unconscious creator of your circumstances. And the moment you become conscious of this creative power, you can begin to use it intentionally to create a life that reflects your highest potential rather than your deepest wounds. The external obstacles that have been blocking your path aren't separate from you. They are expressions of the internal obstacles that live within your psyche. And as you begin to clear the internal barriers, the limiting beliefs, the unhealed traumas, the disowned parts of yourself, the external barriers begin to dissolve as well. Your reality is about to shift in ways you never thought possible, because you're about to understand how to work with the most powerful creative force in your psyche, the unconscious mind that has been running your life from behind the scenes. And when you align this unconscious creative power with your conscious intentions, when you heal the internal splits that create external conflicts, when you integrate the shadow that creates the obstacles, something miraculous begins to happen. You begin to experience what Jung called wholeness, and from this place of integration, you naturally begin to create a reality that reflects not your wounds, but your authentic power. Something extraordinary happens the moment you stop fighting your shadow and start listening to it. Something shifts when you stop trying to eliminate the parts of yourself that sabotage and start understanding why they exist. This is where the real transformation begins, not in conquering your darkness, but in making peace with it. Can you feel that part of you right now that's been working so hard to protect you? Can you sense the intelligence behind your self-sabotage, the wisdom hidden in your resistance, the love disguised as limitation? Your shadow has been your most devoted guardian, and it's time to acknowledge the sacred work it's been doing on your behalf. Jung understood that integration isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's not about eliminating your shadow qualities, but about transforming your relationship with them. The very parts of yourself that have been your greatest obstacles are waiting to become your greatest strengths. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can continue to see your patterns of self-sabotage as evidence of your brokenness, or you can begin to see them as invitations to wholeness. You can keep fighting against the parts of yourself that hold you back, or you can start working with them as allies in your growth. The integration process begins with a radical shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "How do I stop sabotaging myself?" you begin asking, "What is my self-sabotage trying to protect me from?" Instead of demanding, "Why can't I just be disciplined?" you start wondering, "What does my resistance know that my conscious mind doesn't understand?" Your psyche never does anything without reason. Every defense mechanism, every protective pattern, every form of self-sabotage developed because it served a purpose at some point in your life. The child who learned to stay small to avoid criticism grew into an adult who sabotages success to avoid judgment. The child who learned to be perfect to earn love grew into an adult who procrastinates to avoid the risk of imperfection. The child who learned that their needs didn't matter grew into an adult who sabotages their own happiness to avoid seeming selfish. These patterns made sense when they were created. They were intelligent adaptations to difficult circumstances. The problem is that they're still running the same protective programs that were designed for a reality that no longer exists. Your shadow is operating from the emotional intelligence of whatever age you were when these patterns were formed. If you learned at age 7 that success meant becoming a target for jealousy, your shadow is still protecting you as if you're 7 years old and vulnerable to that same danger. If you learned at age 12 that standing out meant being rejected, your shadow is still keeping you invisible, as if you're 12 and dependent on others for survival. Integration means updating these protective systems with current information. It means showing your shadow that you're no longer the powerless child who needed those particular defenses. It means proving to the scared parts of yourself that you now have resources, skills, and support that didn't exist when those fears were formed. But this isn't a process you can think your way through. This is emotional archaeology. This is nervous system healing. This is about creating new felt experiences of safety that convince your body and your unconscious mind that it's safe to let you succeed, safe to let you be seen, safe to let you have what you want. The first step in integration is developing what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox, to contain opposites, to be with conflicting truths without needing to resolve them immediately. You learn to hold both your desire for success and your fear of success. You learn to contain both your longing for love and your terror of intimacy. You learn to embrace both your need for growth and your attachment to familiar patterns. This isn't about choosing one side or the other. This is about expanding your capacity to hold complexity, to be human, to contain multitudes. The transcendent function allows you to say, yes, I want to succeed, and yes, part of me is terrified of success. Both of these truths can exist simultaneously. When you stop trying to eliminate the fear and start including it in your experience, something miraculous happens. The fear begins to transform, not because you've fought it or overcome it, but because you've given it space to exist and breathe and tell you what it needs. Your fear of success might tell you that it needs reassurance that you won't abandon the people you love if you become successful. Your fear of visibility might tell you that it needs to know you can handle criticism without falling apart. Your fear of abundance might tell you that it needs evidence that you can manage resources responsibly. These aren't unreasonable concerns. These are the legitimate worries of the protective parts of your psyche that have been working overtime to keep you safe. And when you listen to these concerns with respect, rather than dismissing them with impatience, you can begin to address them directly. Integration happens through dialogue, not domination. You don't overcome your shadow, you conversation with it. You don't eliminate your resistance, you understand it. You don't force yourself past your fears, you work with them as partners in your growth. This conversation often begins in your body. Notice where you feel tension when you think about your goals. Notice what happens in your chest when you consider taking a risk. Notice how your stomach responds when you think about being truly visible in your power. Your body is where your shadow lives. Your body is where your unconscious beliefs are stored. Your body is where the scared parts of you are waiting to be acknowledged and healed. And your body is where the transformation happens. Jung understood that integration requires what he called active imagination, a process of engaging directly with the unconscious through imagery, dialogue, and creative expression. You begin to personify the parts of yourself that sabotage. You give them faces, stories. You ask them what they need, what they're afraid of, what they're trying to protect you from. You might have a conversation with the part of you that procrastinates. What does this part look like? How old does it feel? What is it trying to prevent? What would it need to feel safe enough to let you move forward? You might dialogue with the part of you that creates chaos whenever life gets too peaceful. What does this part believe about peace? What danger does it think stability represents? What would convince it that you can handle sustained success without losing your edge or your identity? You might speak directly to the part of you that sabotages relationships whenever they get too close. What did this part learn about love? What does intimacy represent to this part of your psyche? What would this part need to experience to believe that love can be safe? These aren't metaphors or psychological exercises. These are real conversations with real parts of your psyche that have real concerns and real wisdom. When you approach them with genuine curiosity and respect, they begin to reveal information that your conscious mind could never access on its own. Your shadow doesn't just contain your fears and limitations, it also contains your disowned power, your rejected gifts, your unexpressed creativity. Integration means reclaiming not just your shadows, but also your light. It means taking back the brilliance you've been too afraid to own, the talents you've been too humble to claim, the power you've been too scared to wield. Think about the qualities you most admire in others. The confidence, the creativity, the authenticity, the courage. These aren't qualities that exist outside of you. These are qualities that live within your own psyche, waiting to be integrated and expressed. But your shadow often guards these positive qualities as fiercely as it guards against your fears. Why? Because your gifts can feel as dangerous as your vulnerabilities. Your brilliance might make others jealous. Your success might create obligations. Your power might make you a target. Your authenticity might lead to rejection. So your shadow hides your light as carefully as it hides your darkness, keeping you safely mediocre, safely invisible, safely limited. But integration means reclaiming all of yourself, both the parts you've been ashamed of and the parts you've been afraid to own. This process unfolds in stages, and Jung understood that each stage has its own challenges and gifts. First comes the recognition stage, where you begin to see your patterns and understand their protective function. This stage often brings relief. Finally, you understand why you've been struggling. Finally, your behavior makes sense. But recognition alone isn't enough. The second stage is dialogue, where you begin to communicate directly with these protective parts. This stage requires courage because it means facing the fears that have been running your life from the shadows. It means listening to the pain that these patterns were designed to avoid. The third stage is negotiation, where you begin to work with your shadow to create new agreements. You acknowledge the validity of its concerns while also communicating your current needs and capabilities. You honor the protection it's provided while also asking it to trust your ability to handle new levels of success, love, and visibility. This negotiation isn't a one-time conversation. It's an ongoing relationship that requires patience, consistency, and respect. Your shadow needs evidence that you can handle what it's been protecting you from. It needs to see that you can navigate criticism without crumbling, that you can handle success without abandoning your values, that you can be visible without losing your safety. You provide this evidence through small, consistent actions that prove your readiness for growth. You take manageable risks that stretch your comfort zone without overwhelming your nervous system. You practice receiving compliments without deflecting them. You allow yourself small successes and notice that you can handle them gracefully. With each piece of evidence, your shadow begins to relax its grip. With each proof of your capability, It becomes more willing to let you expand. With each demonstration of your integrity, it trusts you more to handle the power and visibility that come with authentic success. The fourth stage is integration, where these previously conflicted parts of yourself begin to work together instead of against each other. Your ambitious self and your protective self find common ground. Your creative self and your practical self collaborate instead of competing. Your visible self and your private self create a sustainable balance. This doesn't mean the tensions disappear completely. Integration doesn't eliminate all internal conflict. It transforms it from destructive fighting into creative tension. The same energy that was creating self-sabotage begins to create innovation, growth, and authentic expression. Jung called this integrated state wholeness, and it's characterized by a particular quality of inner peace. Not the peace of having eliminated all challenges, but the peace of no longer being at war with yourself. The peace of having all parts of your personality working toward the same goal instead of pulling in different directions. From this place of integration, something remarkable happens to your external reality. Remember, your outer world reflects your inner world. As you heal the internal splits, the external conflicts begin to resolve. As you integrate your shadow projections, you stop attracting people and situations that mirror your internal divisions. You begin to attract opportunities that match your integrated wholeness, rather than obstacles that reflect your internal fragmentation. You draw people who can appreciate all aspects of your personality, rather than people who only connect with your persona or only trigger your shadow. You create circumstances that support your authentic expression rather than situations that force you to hide or perform. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a straight line. Integration is a spiral process where you revisit the same themes at deeper and deeper levels. Each time you think you've resolved a pattern, it shows up again in a more subtle form, inviting you to integrate it at an even deeper level. But with each spiral, you become more skilled at recognizing your patterns, more compassionate toward your protective mechanisms, and more effective at creating internal harmony. You develop what Jung called psychological mindedness, the ability to see beneath surface behaviors to the underlying psychological dynamics. You begin to recognize when you're projecting your fears onto external situations. You catch yourself creating obstacles when you're actually afraid of success. You notice when you're sabotaging relationships because intimacy feels dangerous, and instead of judging these patterns, you use them as information about what needs attention and healing. The signs of successful integration are unmistakable. You stop feeling like you're fighting against yourself. Your goals and your actions begin to align naturally. Your relationships become more authentic and less dramatic. Your creative expression flows more freely. Your success feels sustainable rather than anxiety-provoking. You develop what Jung called psychological resilience, the ability to face challenges without fragmenting into conflicted parts. When difficulties arise, instead of different parts of you wanting different things, your integrated self can respond with clarity and coherence. You also develop genuine self-compassion, not the forced positivity that tries to eliminate negative feelings, but the mature kindness that can hold all aspects of your experience with love. You can be disappointed without being devastated. You can be afraid without being paralyzed. You can be angry without being destructive. Most importantly, you begin to trust yourself in a completely new way. Not the naive trust that believes you'll never make mistakes, but the mature trust that knows you can handle whatever happens. You trust your ability to navigate success and failure, love and loss, visibility and solitude. This trust transforms your relationship with risk. Instead of avoiding opportunities because they might not work out perfectly, You embrace them because you know you can handle whatever outcomes they bring. Instead of waiting until you feel completely ready, you move forward knowing that readiness is something you develop through action, not something you achieve through preparation. Your relationship with failure transforms as well. Instead of seeing setbacks as evidence of your inadequacy, you recognize them as information about what needs adjustment. Instead of using difficulties as reasons to abandon your goals, you use them as feedback about how to pursue your goals more effectively. From this integrated place, you naturally begin to create what Jung called a life worth living. Not a perfect life, but an authentic life. Not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges become opportunities for growth, rather than evidence of inadequacy. You stop trying to be someone you're not, and start becoming more of who you actually are. You stop pursuing success to prove your worth, and start creating value because it expresses your nature. You stop seeking love to fill an inner emptiness, and start sharing love, because you've learned to love yourself completely. This is the promise of shadow integration, not the elimination of all problems, but the transformation of your relationship with problems. Not the end of all fear, but the courage to act in the presence of fear. Not the absence of all conflict, but the wisdom to work with conflict as a creative force, rather than a destructive one. Your shadow has been waiting your entire life for this conversation. It has been holding your deepest fears and your greatest power, protecting both until you were ready to reclaim them consciously. The self-sabotage that has frustrated you for so long has actually been your psyche's way of keeping you safe until you develop the resources to handle your full potential. Now you understand that you are not broken. You are not your own worst enemy. You are a human being with a sophisticated psychological protection system that has been working exactly as it was designed to work. And now that you understand how it works, you can collaborate with it to create the life you actually want, instead of the life your fears convinced you was all you deserved. The transformation is already beginning. Can you feel it? That subtle shift in how you see yourself, how you understand your patterns, how you relate to your own complexity. You are no longer a victim of your unconscious mind. You are becoming a conscious partner with all the parts of yourself that make you beautifully, completely, authentically